Hi everybody, this is FIDE Master Dennis Monokroussos, and today I wanted to take a look at a recent game, a very nice attacking game, and the only problem is I'm not sure how to say the players' names, so that's why I expanded the usual portion of the screen so you can see it for yourself. So white is, I don't know, Buvin, and black is Gwyn, and keep going. So I'm just going to refer to white and black, and those of you who know how to say Vietnamese names correctly and well can try to help me for the future. I'm sure this is going to be something that all of us are going to have to master soon enough as players like Li Quang, Liam, and others start to make their name in the world chess scene. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly go through the opening moves and then we'll get to the fun stuff. So it's in English, and white plays this d4 line, which is not considered to be terribly important, but okay, it's something you can play every once in a while, and it's turning into something kind of like the flexible variation of the Nimzo. Perhaps we can say it's a sideline of that. Anyway, so we're just going to continue here, again, not worrying about details. I'd say the position is roughly equal, but around here, Black's idea of trying to close this bishop on a3, keep it out of the game, just doesn't really seem to work very well. So bishop e6, knight e3, queen c7, rook a to b1, rook a to d8. Okay, well, white obviously has a lot of active play. Okay, the bishop on a3 isn't really doing much, but the rest of white's army is actually very well posted. Obviously, white has a lot of control over the d5 square. So this is clearly an asset in white's camp, and there are various ways in which he can try to extend his control over d5. Also, he has more space. The f-pawn might go forward. He has some pressure at b7. Maybe we could call it implicit pressure at the moment, but it's there. And black, for his part, really has just one big asset. That's or let's say one big idea, if you can achieve it, and that's to play d5. If black can't play d5, then white is certainly going to at least enjoy the initiative for a long time. Maybe all things being equal in a position like this, black has reasonable chances, but they're going to be long-term chances because obviously white has very good control over the center. I mean, you can see, given all of his center pawns, or near center pawns, so between these four pawns, they control e5, d3, d4, and d5. So practically every square is controlled by, in the center is controlled by white pawns. This bishop takes care of e4, as does the queen. Okay, d5 has further protection as well. So you can see that white has very good central control, while black, for his part, has one piece that controls d4, no piece that controls e4. Okay, one pawn hits e5, and he has two guys hitting d5. So clearly, white has a real preponderance when it comes to central control. Okay, well, it's white to move here, of course, and this is a really good position to try to figure out what he should do. So I would stop the recording for a while, take some time, and do your best. Okay, well, white has a lot of positional things going for him, but he realized here that there are some very interesting tactical possibilities. And the first move he played was f5. Now, there is a drawback, or a potential drawback to this move, which is that it gives up control over the e5 square. So if black is given time to play knight d7, e5, or maybe bishop f6, bishop e5, that could be a bit of a factor. However, it's going to take black a little bit of time to get to that point. And of course, first of all, he has to do something about the bishop on e6. So he plays bishop to c8. Okay, well, once again, the challenge is to figure out what white to move should do. Of course, ideally you should have decided on this before playing f5 because it's a very committal move. But if you haven't, try from here. Actually, white has two moves in this position that are both quite good, and they transpose. So one move that he could have played but didn't is rook takes b6. Now, the first point of this is that queen takes b6 is impossible. Well, it's legal, but it's not possible if you want to make moves that aren't immediately seen to be bad. After knight to d5, black has no way to save the queen and the bishop both. So can save one or the other, but can't save them both. And so white will have a material advantage to go along with his positional edge. Okay, so a takes b6 is forced. All right, now knight to d5. Well, the only move here is queen to d7. And now, what would you do with white? Of course, you could play knight takes b6, but that's really, let's say, a foolish sort of greed. Okay, the b6 pawn is really not important. What's important here is kingside play. So f6. This is very strong. If bishop takes f6, then white plays rook takes f6, and now the position is already pretty hopeless for black. Material is even on a textbook way of thinking of things. White has a bishop and a knight for a rook and a pawn, but black's rook and, of course, all the more the pawn are completely irrelevant. I mean, white's pieces are dominating here, and black should lose. Of course, it's important that he can't take the rook because of knight takes f6 and knight takes queen. So that's pretty clearly a big problem for black. So here he has to play g takes f6. And now bishop to e4 seems to be best, and I think is winning. Bishop to c1 is also quite good, probably winning as well, but I think bishop to e4 is the most accurate move. We'll come back to this position in a few moments. In the game, white played it a little bit differently, though it could have transposed. So he played f6 first. Now, in the game, black played bishop takes f6, and thus the game will diverge. If he had played gf, then we end up in the same spot. So he could play bishop to e4, but rook takes b6 is fine. Again, if queen takes, then knight to d5. So ab, knight to d5, queen d7, and bishop to e4. Okay, this move has a number of ideas. One is, of course, to hit the h-pawn. That's pretty obvious. There's also playing bishop to f5, and black's queen could be embarrassed in some cases. Remember, she has to keep control over the bishop on e7. Ironically, the best move is probably f5, trying to throw a Novotny in white's path. I believe that's the correct term for when you sacrifice a piece where it'll interfere with one piece or the other, and in particular, if the bishop captures, then the rook, the horizontal piece is blocked, and if you take with the horizontal or vertical piece, the diagonal gets blocked. In any case, Novotny or no, white is still winning. Bishop takes f5, queen e8, takes, queen to e4. And against this, black has no good defense. The threat, of course, is to take here, and of course black also doesn't want to allow knight to f6 check in a case where it'll win the queen. And another problem is that if he plays bishop to d8, then queen g4 check, and queen takes the rook on c8. So black is just lost here. If he tries bishop to g5, then queen g4, f6, and this doesn't help. If he plays h6, of course that's even worse because of knight f6 check, winning the queen. And if f6, then rook takes f6. And the bishop is again threatened. Rook takes f6, loses the queen in the same way. Knight f6 check and knight takes e8. And h6, of course, doesn't help either because of rook takes h6, if nothing else. So, after bishop to e4, black can try moves besides f5, but I believe he's just losing pretty straightforwardly. Okay, so in the game after f6, black tried bishop takes f6. Alright, well, once again, what do you do? So we've sacrificed a pawn, but what's our payoff? Well, white found a very nice idea here, and it's this. First he takes this one, and then he takes this one. So he destroys black's kingside, and then he ensures that the knight on d5 will be unmolested. And remarkably, even though he's going to be down, well, 5 pawns, or 5 points worth of material, 2 exchanges and a pawn, white's position is simply winning. So let's see how it works. In the game black took with the queen. If he takes with the pawn, then knight to d5. And the only safe square for the queen is b8. If it goes to c6, then it can be lost to the bishop on either knight e7 or knight takes f6. Of course, if the queen goes to d7, then knight f6 check and knight d7. So, queen to b8. And now, the fact that black is up 5 points in material really doesn't mean a whole lot because he has very few defenders. I mean, the queen is just shut out of the game completely. His bishop on c8 is not bad, but white can very easily work around it. The problem for black on the king side is the dark squares. So the fact that he's got a light squared bishop is insufficient to help him save the day. Okay, well, white plays queen to e3 here, aiming to simply play knight takes f6 check. If king h8, then queen h6, and if king g7, white just takes a little stopover on g5 and then goes to h6. So king to h8, queen h6, and rook to g8 is about the best that he can do. But now not knight takes f6, but simply queen takes f6 and queen takes d8. And now white is attacking, well, not only for free, but enjoying a material advantage as well. And this is absolutely hopeless for black. Okay, so since that's too easy, black played queen takes b6. Alright, knight to d5 and queen to a5. So here at least, black is counterattacking slightly. Okay, well, white plays bishop to c1 and is going to bring a new piece into the attack after all. And again, the black queen is still having a tough time shut out of play here. Alright, there are at least 3 moves that black could try. In the game he played f5. We'll see how that works soon enough. If he tries queen takes a2, which makes sense. He wants to activate the queen and keep taking things while we can. Okay, in this case, knight takes f6 check. Alright, the king can't go to the corner because queen takes h7 would be mate. So king g7. Alright, bishop to g5 would protect the knight, threatening queen takes h7 mate again. Rook h8. And now, after knight to h5 check, funny enough, white's regaining his material. So king f8, bishop takes d8. And again, material is even, or functionally even. White has a bishop and a knight for a rook and a pawn. But black's pawn and rook, for that matter, are really aren't really functioning in any interesting way. They just aren't relevant. And black's king, and its very exposed location, that's highly relevant. So this is completely winning for white. Okay, another try is rook d to e8. And black is basically volunteering, okay, give back some material, but in return for this, hopefully he can achieve some kind of safe position. Unfortunately, he gets mated here. See if you can work it out. So it's a good exercise. Stop the recording, see if you can calculate this position all the way to checkmate. I don't know that you would have to do this to begin the combination in a tournament game, but it's not a bad calculation exercise. So give it a try, see what you can do. Okay, well, we start with knight takes f6 check, king g7 is forced, queen takes h7 check, king takes f6. Alright, well now what? Black is threatening to bring the king home via e7, so we can't allow that. Bishop to g5 check is best. Alright, and now we can consider a couple of possibilities here. If king to e6, trying to say thanks but no thanks, then queen to h3 check. Okay, if king to e5 now, then bishop f4 check, king to f6, queen h6 check, and the important thing here is that king e7 walks into this checkmate, and if king f5, kind of a nice checkmate in two. I think there are actually a couple of different ways. Yeah, g4 also works. The main line is e4, my main line is e4, forcing the rook to take away the e4 square, and then bishop to h3 mate. Okay, so instead of king to e5, there's f5. And now bishop to d5 check. Okay, again, if king e5, bishop f4, queen h4, and queen to g6. So another nice pattern with the the light square bishop and the queen on the dark square is kind of giving a crisscross mate. And on king to d7, then after queen to h7 check, all of white's pieces are needed, and it's checkmate after the two rooks throw themselves in the way. Or only one rook can do it. Okay, so it's up to black, but after the rook interpositions come to an end, so does black's king's life. Okay, so after bishop to g5 check, king e6 doesn't work. So king takes g5, queen to g7 check, king f5, bishop h3 check, king e4. And now I don't think there is any checkmate with checks, but simply queen to h6 or queen to g5 will force mate next. There's nothing that black can do. So that, for example, is a path to the end. Okay, so rook d to e8 doesn't save the day. Queen takes a2 doesn't save the day. So black tried f5. And this at least takes care of the knight f6 check followed by queen takes h7 idea. But now the dark squares are weaker, so white switches gears and plays queen to e3. And the threat is to play queen g5 check, king h8, queen f6 check, king back, and knight e7 mate. Okay. Additionally, even if black stops the knight to e7 part of it, after queen g5 and queen f6, bishop to h6 is also deadly. So black has quite a lot on his plate if he hopes to survive. Now, f6 is a really natural move, but surprisingly, after queen to e7, very strong move, black is just paralyzed when it comes to stopping the mate. If he plays queen to a4, just to show the basic idea, then bishop to h6 mates. And the point is that after queen to d7, then knight takes f6. Okay, if king h8, bishop to g7 is mate. And if rook takes, then we play bishop to d5 check. And again, same deal. King h8, bishop g7. And if rook f7, then bishop takes, king over, and queen f6 is mate. Most unfortunate for black, to put it mildly. So after queen to e7, another try is f4. Bishop takes f4, bishop f5. So trying to help out in the defense of h7, but again, the dark squares are fatal. So rook f7, knight f6 check. Okay, if king over, queen takes f6, and then bishop to g7 is going to be mating, and on rook takes, queen g7 mate. So, after queen to e3, f6, as logical as it is, isn't good enough. But nothing is here. Black tried king to h8, and once again, the very nice queen to e7 is fatal. So this is a great move because it keeps an eye on both rooks, as well as, of course, eyeing the f6 square. Black played rook to g8, queen f6 check, rook to g7, and here actually white went astray. He went awry. It didn't cost him the game, but it definitely made things a bit tougher for him than they needed to be. Or it could have made them tougher, I should say. Okay, well, white's move here, what would you do? So try to work it out to a really clearly winning position. Okay, well, the right move here is bishop to h6. Okay, it's an obvious move. So the key is to find the follow-up. Rook d to g8. Knight e7, threatening to play knight takes g8 and then give mate on g7. Black plays queen to d8. And I suspect that white saw this and maybe felt that black was getting out a little bit here. But what he might have missed, I don't know, maybe he was in time trouble too, but what definitely wins here, clearly, is this. Bishop takes g7 check, rook g7, and then knight to g6 check, followed by queen takes d8. So this might have been what white overlooked, and here it's just very, very easy. In the game, instead of bishop to h6, he played h4, which is slow, but certainly very dangerous. So, of course, the idea is to play h5 and h6 and keep the bishop. Why give up a bishop for the rook when you can, collect the rook for just a pawn? Well, black played bishop to e6, and white was able to win without any further difficulty. But rook t to g8 is a bit better. And the point is that if white continues in the same vein with h5, I believe that it's, well, okay, he can still win, but not, it's, well, okay, let me take that back. I'm not even sure that he's winning, and if he plays in a kind of a natural way, it's only going to be a draw. So after h5, queen takes a2, and now if h6, the point of all of this, then queen to b1, takes, and white has nothing better than a perpetual check at this point, with queen d8, queen f6. Now he can improve a bit with bishop to f4. Queen takes e2, and now h6. But, okay, there's no mate, and after these captures, let's say queen d6 takes and takes, it's not really completely clear here how big white's advantage is. Certainly he is better. He stands better. He's going to win a pawn back because the threat of bishop to e5 check. But, hey, I mean, it's rook and 2 pawns for a bishop and a knight. And most of, well, okay, black is at least doing fairly well in some parts of the board. White has doubled c-pawns, another small inconvenience. So this is, you know, it's definitely better for white, but it's very far from winning. Whereas the line we saw before with bishop to h6 was just a very easy win. Okay, well, let's go back here. After rook d to g8, instead of h5, white could still play bishop to h6, and probably is still winning, although there are some lines where it's kind of complicated. Probably best play is f4, knight e7, queen a2, and now not knight takes g8. If knight g8, queen b1 check, and queen g6, and this endgame is not completely clear, so I'll just very quickly run through the moves of my main variation to give you an idea. And certainly this end product is nowhere even remotely near as easy as what we could have had earlier. So this is probably a win for white, probably, but I'm not 100% sure, and certainly this is, you know, going to go 30 moves longer than the game needed to. Instead of knight takes g8, white should play bishop takes f4. And then after queen takes e2, only now knight g8. Okay, king takes g8 is no good because of queen to d8 check, and mate next move. So queen to e6, takes, and white is winning here. But even this, you know, this takes a few very nice, very accurate moves, and you know, again, this is more difficulty than it was worth, given what white could have had from here. So just bishop to h6, and we saw this was quite simple. Okay, well, back to the game. h4, and now instead of rook d to g8, black played bishop to e6. So hoping to just get rid of this really you know, awesome knight that's crippled black for the whole game. But now it's too slow. So h5, threatening h6. Okay, black played h6. It doesn't really matter. Takes here, takes, and now h6, and it's mate. Yeah, just mate next move. So there's not even a spite check to be found. So a very nice game by white. I mean, it was a great concept, this double exchange sack. I mean, that's, you don't see that too often, and it's quite nice. So from here, f5, f6, and we sack this exchange, we sack that exchange, and put the knight on d5. And the key thing is that black's queen simply can't help. And in fact, black has no pieces that can defend on the dark squares. He doesn't have a knight, he doesn't have a dark squared bishop, and his queen is shut out. And even his rooks really have a difficult time covering a lot of these squares as well. So, very beautiful idea by white. I think it's certainly instructive. I mean, it shows a number of things. So one is that if you have a promising attacking position, you can sacrifice quite a lot, and it doesn't have to be for an immediate forcing combination. So you can simply believe in your position. The fact that black is up to exchanges doesn't really mean very much when you look at how incredibly passive his rooks are compared to white's pieces. Also, when you're evaluating material, remember it's not just the material, let's say, in the abstract, but the material in the relevant portions of the board. And here, since we're talking about attacking black's king, what counts is the quantity of force that white can bring to bear over there, and that black can bring to defend. not just what the totals are, if the totals include pieces that can perform no useful defensive functions at all. So I think it's a very nice example of attacking play and of long-term sacrifice, or long-term sacrifices. So White gave up quite a bit, and it worked out very nicely. So I hope you enjoyed this game, and hope you learned something too. And also, I hope that we all come to know these names well, so that in the future, as these players kind of work their way up the chess ladder, we'll be able to say that we remember these early games that they played and saw it coming. All right, well, thanks a lot, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.